All right, so let's dive into something pretty cool. Azure Virtual Desktop. Have you heard about this? It could completely change how you work and play. Sometimes you just need a ton of computing power. But maybe you're not at your desk or your current setup just can't handle it. That's where this gets interesting. Imagine a full Windows desktop experience with all your apps and files, accessible from any device, anywhere.
Yeah, that's what's so great about virtual desktops in the cloud. It's like having a supercomputer in your pocket, you know,
Yeah.
ready whenever you need it.
We got some info from a listener about Azure Virtual Desktop, and honestly, I'm excited to unpack this. It's way more than just accessing files remotely, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's not just about convenience. Azure Virtual Desktop is really about flexibility and customization. You get to choose what kind of desktop you want. Windows 11,
Yeah.
10, even Windows Server if you need that.
Wow, so it's not one size fits all. You can tailor it to your needs.
Exactly. It goes even deeper than that. Think about how you use a computer. Do you like having your own setup or sharing with others? With Azure Virtual Desktop, you can choose between single session, like your personal computer, or multi-session, where multiple users share the same virtual machine.
Multi-session. That sounds like it could be a game changer for businesses, especially for keeping costs down. Is that unique to Azure Virtual Desktop?
You got it. This multi-session capability on Windows 11 and 10 Enterprise, it's only available on Azure Virtual Desktop. That's a huge advantage when you need to scale up without needing to buy a bunch more hardware. It's like a powerful family computer,
Mm.
you know, but with great security and efficient resource management.
Okay, that's impressive. But what about software? Can you run any application on this virtual desktop?
Pretty much. Azure Virtual Desktop lets you install almost any app you can think of. Standard programs, specialized software, you name it.
So I could even use industry-specific software, the kind that normally needs a really powerful machine.
Exactly. And it's not just about having a full desktop. You can use something called Remote App, which lets you access individual applications.
Hold on, so I wouldn't need to install a whole software suite. If I just need one program,
You got it. It's like a digital Swiss Army knife. You have every tool you need ready when you are. Imagine you need to edit a document while you're out. You can access just the word processing software through Remote App. No need to log into the full desktop.
that's slick. So we've got flexibility in the operating system, flexibility in how we set up the sessions, and a huge variety of applications. It all sounds great, but is it affordable?
That's one of the best parts. Azure Virtual Desktop was designed with cost in mind. Think about it. With traditional setups, you're constantly paying for hardware, maintenance, upgrades. Azure Virtual Desktop changes all that. You only pay for what you use, and you don't have to manage the infrastructure.
That sounds like a huge relief, especially for businesses or anyone tired of IT headaches.
Exactly. And it gets even better. Azure Virtual Desktop uses something called pooled resources, which lets multiple users share the same infrastructure. It's incredibly efficient.
So no more servers sitting around doing nothing, just costing money.
Right. And there's also auto-scaling, which means the system automatically adjusts resources based on demand. If you suddenly have a ton of users, Azure Virtual Desktop scales up. Then when things calm down, it scales back down, saving you money.
That's amazing. Like a smart thermostat for your computing power, adjusting automatically to keep things running smoothly. But what about setting it all up? Is it complicated to deploy and access?
It's actually pretty straightforward. You use familiar tools, the Azure portal, command line interfaces, even PowerShell.
So even someone who's comfortable with basic tech stuff could manage it.
Absolutely. And when it comes to accessing your virtual desktop, you've got options. The Windows app, the remote desktop client, or even a web browser. It's about providing a smooth and secure experience. And speaking of security, Azure Virtual Desktop uses reverse connections, which eliminates the need to open inbound ports on your network for better security.
That sounds like a big advantage compared to traditional remote access, but how do you give different users access to the specific apps they need?
You can create application groups. Let's say you have graphic designers who need resource-intensive software. You create a group just for them, so they have the tools they need, without cluttering the desktops of other users.
So it's like customized toolboxes for different teams.
Exactly. Each user gets a tailored experience, optimized for their tasks, streamlining workflows, and maximizing productivity.
This has been eye-opening. We've learned how flexible and scalable Azure Virtual Desktop can be, the variety of applications, and how cost-effective it is. But we've only scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore.
There is. We haven't even talked about the impact this can have on collaboration, security, and user experience.
Stay with us. We'll delve even deeper into Azure Virtual Desktop. and uncover even more fascinating insights after the break. I'm still thinking about all the possibilities with Azure Virtual Desktop. It really feels like we're on the verge of something big, a new way of working.
Yeah, it's a fundamental shift. We're moving away from being tied to one machine to a world where we can work from anywhere.
It's like breaking free from the old way of doing things. But beyond the flexibility and convenience, what I'm really excited about is the potential for collaboration.
Imagine a team of architects working on a complex project, each of them accessing the same high-performance virtual machines and specialized software from different cities, even different continents.
Wow, it's like everyone's in the same room, even if they're miles apart. And it's not just for businesses. Think about education.
Absolutely. Students could access virtual labs with the latest software, no matter where they are or what kind of devices they have.
It really levels the playing field. But with all this talk about accessing data from anywhere, security has to be a top priority.
You're right, security is paramount, especially in the cloud. But Azure Virtual Desktop has robust security built in. Remember those reverse connections we talked about? They create a secure tunnel between your device and the virtual desktop, so you don't need to open any vulnerable ports.
Like a security guard at the door, making sure only the right people get in. But what about things like stolen passwords or phishing attacks?
Azure Virtual Desktop has that covered too. It supports multi-factor authentication, which requires users to verify their identity in multiple ways, like a code sent to their phone or a fingerprint scan.
So it's like having two locks on your door. What about the overall security of the whole environment? How can we be sure everything is protected?
Azure has a comprehensive security center. It gives you a central view of your entire security posture.
So even though it's virtual, it sounds like the security is even better than some traditional setups.
That's the power of the cloud. Security is a top priority for Microsoft, and they invest heavily in making Azure secure.
That makes sense. But security is only one part of the equation. What about performance? I've used remote access solutions before, and sometimes they can be slow and frustrating, especially with demanding applications.
I know what you mean. Nobody wants to deal with lag. But Azure Virtual Desktop has features to enhance performance. We talked about auto-scaling, which adjusts resources based on demand. But you can also choose different virtual machine sizes with varying levels of processing power, memory, and storage.
So you can choose the right machine for the job.
Exactly. And if you're working with graphics-intensive apps, like video editing or 3D modeling, you can choose virtual machines with dedicated GPUs, graphics processing units, for even better performance.
Wow, that's impressive. What about the network itself? I know internet speed can be a problem with remote access.
Azure has a global network of data centers, strategically located all over the world, to ensure low latency and high bandwidth.
So even if I'm working from a coffee shop, I can still have a good experience.
That's the goal. Azure Virtual Desktop aims to provide a seamless experience. It's as good as, or even better than, traditional desktop setup.
This is making me rethink remote work. But what about managing all of this? Traditional desktops can be a pain to maintain with updates and patches and troubleshooting. Is Azure Virtual Desktop just as complex?
Actually, it's much simpler. One of the best things about Azure Virtual Desktop is its simplified management. Microsoft handles the underlying infrastructure, so you don't have to. You only need to manage the virtual desktops and apps themselves.
That saves so much time. Are there any tools to help with those management tasks?
Of course, Azure provides a whole suite of management tools. You can use the Azure portal, which gives you a dashboard to monitor everything. And there are tools like Azure Monitor and Azure Log Analytics, which give you insights into performance, usage, and security.
It's like having a team of experts analyzing everything, so you can make informed decisions.
That's a great way to put it. And if you want even more detailed information, you can use Azure Virtual Desktop Insights.
It sounds really comprehensive, so no matter how big your organization is, Azure Virtual Desktop has the tools to manage your environment.
Exactly. And remember, we talked about the different deployment options, fully cloud-based or hybrid with Azure Local, so organizations can choose the best approach for their needs.
It's like a custom-fit suit for your virtual desktop environment. But let's be realistic. It can't be all perfect.
You're right. No technology is perfect. While Azure Virtual Desktop is great, there are a few things to keep in mind.
Okay, I'm listening. What are the potential challenges? So we've talked about the good stuff, but what about the not-so-good stuff? What are those things we should consider?
Well, one thing is, even though it's pretty easy to set up, there's still a bit of a learning curve, especially if you're not familiar with virtual desktops.
So it's not as simple as just logging in.
Not exactly. There are some things you'll need to learn about,
Yeah.
like managing host pools, application groups, and creating virtual machine images. But don't worry, Microsoft has a lot of documentation and tutorials to help you out.
Oh, good. I thought I'd have to read a bunch of technical
No,
manuals.
no, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
But one thing to keep in mind is that deploying a full Azure Virtual Desktop environment, especially for a big organization, it takes some time and planning.
Right. So it's not something you can do overnight.
No, you need to think about your needs. Choose the right virtual machines. Set up networking and security, and train your users.
Makes sense. And speaking of important things, what about internet connectivity? That has to be really good, right?
Absolutely. You need a reliable internet connection for Azure Virtual Desktop to work well. Imagine your internet goes out during a presentation. That would be a disaster.
Yeah, no kidding. So a good internet provider is key. Is it just about download and upload speeds? Or is there more to it?
Speed is important, but latency is crucial too. Latency is the delay between your actions and the response from the virtual desktop. If latency is high, everything will feel slow, especially for things like video calls or gaming.
So if you need to communicate quickly, high latency is a problem.
Definitely. You need to consider network latency, especially if you're far away from the Azure data centers.
Right. We've talked about the cost savings, but are there any hidden costs or anything?
Well, Azure Virtual Desktop is usually very cost-effective, but the costs can vary depending on how you use it and how it's set up. Things like the number of users, the size of the virtual machines, storage, and data transfer. They can all affect your bill.
So it's not a fixed price every month?
Not necessarily. It's more like a utility bill. You pay for what you use. But Azure has tools to help you manage costs.
That's good. So no surprises.
Exactly. And one more thing. Azure Virtual Desktop is part of a bigger ecosystem. You might need other Azure services too, like Azure Active Directory or Azure Storage.
So there might be additional costs there.
Yes, but if you plan carefully, Azure Virtual Desktop can save you a lot of money.
This has been really helpful, but before we finish, I want to talk about the human side of things. Moving to virtual desktops can be a big change for people.
You're right. Change can be hard. People might not want to leave their old ways behind. That's why training and support are so important.
So you can't just give people access and expect them to figure it out.
No, you need to explain the benefits, train them properly, and help them with any problems.
Like giving them a tour of their new workspace.
Exactly. And it's important to listen to their feedback so you can make things better.
So it's all about working together and supporting each other.
Yes. That's how you make the transition to Azure Virtual Desktop successful.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive. We've learned so much about Azure Virtual Desktop, the flexibility, the security, the performance, even the challenges.
It's an amazing technology with the potential to change how we work and learn.
I think our listeners have a much better understanding now. So to wrap things up, what's the one thing you want our listeners to remember?
I want them to remember that Azure Virtual Desktop is more than just technology. It's a whole new way of thinking. It's about working from anywhere, collaborating without limits, and having access to powerful tools no matter who you are.
That's a great way to put it. It's a glimpse into the future. So to all our listeners out there, explore Azure Virtual Desktop. You might be surprised what you can achieve. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.